Loud and clear? Okay, can you put the mic? Center way. Can you hear? Let me know when you go. I see.
Okay, we're good? All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Fausto Mathis. I'm the co-president of the Mathis and Raymond Foundation. The other co-presidents right here, Matthew Long. We have basically political forums here, political and social forums here once a month. One Saturday out of the month, usually on Saturdays around 7:30 at night. And today we're going to have a mock presidential debate. I'm glad we did this because I had a tough time getting some people to get on this panel, but I'm glad at the last minute everybody decided to come. First, I'm going to introduce the big panelists now. Oh, and also one thing before I do that, we have donation jars. One right here in the middle of the, right here in the middle. If you want to donate to our foundation, Mathis Raymond Foundation, you can do so. If you want to know more about our foundation, go to mathisraymond.org. So now, like I said, we have a mock presidential debate. I'm going to introduce the panelists. First, representing the Democratic Party, Mr. Tony Whatley. He's a political strategist with 10 years of political experiences. Mr. Whatley has a degree in political science from the University of Florida. He has served as constituent liaison for the Florida State Representative Edward Jennings. He was campaign manager for congressional campaign of David Bruntley for Congress. He was political pundit on the hit political show The Bleak and Truth that gained national recognition for his straightforward, no-hold-barred commentary. And currently, Mr. Whatley is a general education professor of sociology and political science at the International Academy of Design and Technology. This is Tony Whatley here to my left. Mr. Quentin Matthews to my far right here. He's the chairman of the Ebony Elephant Foundation, representing the Republican Party. And I'm going to go over the mission statement for the Ebony Elephant Foundation. The Ebony Elephant Foundation, they believe that many modern political and economic policies have disproportionately ravaged certain communities. Quentin believes liberal policies that dominate urban communities have resulted in unintended consequences that erode civil liberties, increase dependency on government, and diminish the initiative that makes the United States so exceptional. He wishes to change the tide so that all Americans will have the chance to flourish in the land of opportunity once again. Mr. Quentin Matthews here to my far right. In the middle, last but not least, Mr. Adrian Welly of the Florida Libertarian Party. Mr. Adrian Welly is the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Florida. He's a syndicated AM talk show radio host and founding partner of the 1787 Network. He is known as a constitutional activist and investigative reporter focusing on government corruption and abuse of power. He is a third-party Generation Floridian small business owner and military veteran. Mr. Adrian Wiley. Wiley, I'm sorry. Wiley. Okay, so here.
Like Wiley Coyote.
Wiley. All right, here's your panelists here. The way the format's going to go is each panelist has a 2-minute opening statement. After that, I have a list of questions that were given to me by people who are interested. Just maybe questions, potential questions for the debate. And then after about an hour and a half, after everybody gets a chance to answer the question for 2 minutes, and then 30 seconds to a minute for rebuttal. Okay? And after about an hour and a half, everyone from the audience, if you got questions, particular panelists, you can do so. We'll do that for 30 minutes. Okay? Does everybody understand? Okay, so we're going to start with the opening statements. We're going to start with right here, Mr. Wilder, Mr. Adrian Wilder.
First of all, thank you, Fausto, for having me here today. A lot of you probably already know what the Republicans stand for, what the Democrats stand for, or at least what they profess that they stand for. You also have a lot of experience on how they've governed for the past century, basically. But you may not know as much about the Libertarian Party. So let me just back up a little bit and tell you the underlying philosophy of the Libertarian Party. It is that you own your life, that you should be free to do what you like what you choose with the absolute minimal interference from government. We believe that government exists only to protect the inherent rights of the individual. And anything beyond that is not the proper role of government. We believe in economic freedom and individual liberty. And we believe in the rule of law. Not the laws that we've seen passed by Republicans and Democrats for the past century. We believe in the United States Constitution and a basic set of principles that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Those rights are being trampled on, whether those are economic freedoms, whether those are civil liberties, they're being destroyed at every turn. And that's the Libertarian Party's aim, is to restore this country from, whether you want to call it a corporatist structure, socialist structure, fascist structure, whatever the label you want to apply to it. We want to restore our nation to that which we stood in grade school and pledged allegiance to, a constitutional republic. And that's the Libertarian Party of Florida supposes. Thank you.
Mr. Watley?
Good evening. I'd like to thank you, Pavel and Raymond Mathis, for allowing me to be here today. I am here to represent the Democratic Party. When I am here and speaking on behalf of Barack Obama and the Democratic Party, I'm here to point out certain facts, not dreams, not perceptions, not wannabes, but truths. One of the problems that we have with the gentleman to my left is they have a lot of great ideas. They have a lot of dreams, and they live in a lot of rabbit holes. But everyday life is something we have to live every day. And it's not something that you can write on a piece of paper and say, oh, this is how it works. Because we know life don't work like a piece of paper. The Democratic Party represents real people, everyday people. We have taken this country from what you had 8 years ago to what you have today. And I promise you, instead of looking back, you need to keep moving forward.
All right, Mr. Matthews?
Thank you for inviting me. I don't get invited out much. I appreciate it. I'm not going to talk about the Republican Party as it stands today. I'm not going to talk about the president as he stands today in his attempted re-election. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and why I believe what I believe and who I am. Because when we speak tonight, when I answer questions, I want you to have a basis for my answers. I was born in Mobile, Alabama, and when I was 6 years old, I had the misfortune of seeing a young man that was hung by the Ku Klux Klan about 3 blocks from my house. He was the last person in the United States to be lynched. His mother left him hanging on that tree so that everybody could see what they had done to her babies. I was taken there by my grandfather, and he told me to look up so that I could see what could happen in things that when I was 14 years old, I met my great-grandmother for the first time. She was 101 years old. Met her in Selma, Alabama. She was sitting in her room in a really large chair. She was about 4 feet tall, small lady, long. And she sat me down and she said, Quincy, you're a pretty little girl. However, you need to know what this world is about. She told me various stories about growing up in rural Alabama. She told me good things that happened and bad things that happened. Don't remember a lot, but I remember one thing that she said. In this life, it is not about what you can get, but about what you can keep. We hear all the time that America's at a crossroads. This is the election. This is the year. This is what it's about. All or nothing. Well, that may or may not be true this year. I don't know. I don't think one man can undo the Constitution in 4 years without somebody stopping. I don't think a Congress can undo our civil liberties in 2 years without somebody stopping. But what I do know is this. If you believe that what you earn, whether it be your money, whether it be your time, whether it be your freedom, is important and something that you need to keep, pay close attention to what I say tonight. Because how you vote matters.
Okay. All right, we're going to get started with the first question here. What I'm going to do is, like I said, it's 2 minutes for answers. So when I hold my hand up like this, that means it's 30 seconds. When I hold my hand up like that, that means it's 10 seconds. All right, so the first question, I'm going to start with Mr. Watson. Everybody else gets to answer the question. What lessons do you take from America's war in Iraq? If you think the war was a mistake, how would you conduct the foreign policy to avoid a repeat of that experience? If you still stand by American intervention, why was it a good idea?
As the Democratic Party has stated for the past 12 years, or since 9/11, 9/11 had absolutely nothing to do with Iraq. One more time. 9/11 had absolutely nothing to do with Iraq. Iraq was a war that should have never happened because Iraq had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. Saddam Hussein had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. Al-Qaeda was not in Iraq before 9/11. Before the United States of America went into Iraq, there were no Al-Qaeda in Iraq. So, when we discuss how the Democratic Party views Iraq, the Democratic Party views Iraq as a mistake. It's a mistake that has cost us $2 trillion. And you wonder how we are in a deficit? That's how we are in a deficit. Because we took $2 trillion from you, the American people, and gave it to Iraq to fight a war that we shouldn't have been in to begin with. We have stood on that principle from day one, and to this day, we still stand on that principle. Iraq was not needed for 9/11. Iraq was a waste of American tax dollars, and it was the Republican Party and the Republican president that took us into that rabbit hole.
I think one of the things I think you're going to find tonight is that I'm going to agree with these guys each about half the time. And on the first question, I agree 100%. Iraq was a mistake. There was no real purpose for the war with Iraq other than to preserve the petrodollar for the most part. The Libertarian Party and Libertarian President Gary Johnson has a non-interventionist foreign policy. We don't need to be the police in the world. And when we do intervene in foreign countries and launch offensive wars and bombing raids and put troops on the ground and launch drone strikes, what we're doing is we're actually furthering the cause of terrorism against us. We are creating new enemies. To put it in perspective, let's say the Chinese government decides to launch a drone strike at your neighbor's house. In the course of that drone strike, your son or daughter, your wife, your husband, your brother, your sister is killed. Now, would you see China as a liberator or an aggressor? And how would that shape your view of China moving forward? Well, effectively, that's what we're doing. And by waging offensive wars, we are doing exactly that. It is not worth the loss of American blood. It's not worth the loss of American treasure. As a former serviceman myself, we need to ensure that we are limited by the Constitution. That if we are going to go to war, there are vital American interests at stake, so that it is truly a defensive and constitutional proposition, and that Congress declare war. Without that, there should be nothing.
Okay. Matthews.
You're going to see that I agree with him half the time also. Start off with that. My two friends here have seemed to have forgotten some facts about the Iraq War and why it occurred. And it's something that the news media forgot to report too, so let's go back in time for a second. And remember that Saddam Hussein tried to assassinate a sitting American president. Does anyone remember that when he was trying to assassinate the first President Bush? Well, lo and behold, President Clinton didn't do anything about it. Sat there, much like he sat there when he was handed Osama bin Laden. Second President Bush said, we're going to go to war. Should he have given real valid reasons to go to war? Yes, he should have. Was he wrong for doing it the way he did? Yes, he was. Is that a reason that the war was wrong and ill-conceived? Maybe yes, maybe no. That's left for the American people to decide. However, it was pointed out that it was a war for oil. I would say this: if Canada, who has a vast natural resource that we all need, which is water, decided that they weren't going to share their lakes, rivers, and streams with the northern United States all of a sudden, they dammed the whole thing up. I think we would go to war with Canada over a resource as well. Natural resources are one of the reasons that human beings have always gone to war. Now, finally, my Democratic friend down here pointed out that the war cost $2 trillion. Yes, it did. People also pointed out that the money came from you, the American people. No, it didn't. Actually, the money came from China, which is one of the things that I'm very concerned about, and why we need to look at our national debt and our deficit and how we proceed in the future.
Okay, so rebuttals here. Ready to go first?
Okay.
30 seconds to 31 minutes.
My first rebuttal would go to my libertarian friend who says that the world does not need a world police. If we don't need a world police, then who's going to do the policing? You have to understand something. This is not 1855. We are not a world of separate countries anymore. We are a global economy where everyone depends on everyone else. And there are a lot of military things going on around the world that if you have countries that start fighting amongst themselves, it affects everyone. It doesn't just affect them. That means we should intervene. And as far as the young man trying to discuss Iraq trying to kill the President of the United States, the CIA has killed several presidents all over the world.
May I have Mr. Johnson?
Okay. I'm going to recant my earlier statement. I'm probably not going to agree with you. And this will address both your questions. You raised the premise of going to war over resources. You raised the premise of policing the entire world. I would say, why don't we trade with the rest of the world openly and freely? Trading partners don't go to war. They find ways. They have differences, but they find ways to resolve their differences. That's why the libertarian objective is free trade with all nations and avoiding the entangling alliances that lead us down the path to war inevitably. So let's trade with them. Let's buy their water.
The problem with that is we don't. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let him go first. Let him go first.
Energy down there.
A lot of energy down here.
I completely agree with the idea of free trade. I despise war. I think it's a horrible, horrible thing. However, I will say this: if push comes to shove and we cannot trade, and the carrot doesn't work, the stick has to be the answer. War should always be an option that we take, though it always should be the last option. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm for war or for killing innocent people, because I'm not. However, we do live in a world where not everyone likes to trade, not everyone likes to talk, not everyone likes to debate. Some people, some countries, some nations, some people only understand violence, and they respond in kind.
It doesn't matter whether you like trade or not. If you have nothing to trade, you can't trade.
Alright, let me go to the
You're
next
talking
one.
as if we all live in a fairy tale where everybody's got something somebody else wants. That's not how the world works.
Alright, body. Here we go. Alright, I'm gonna stay on the same question here, alright? I'm not the same question, but similar question, about the war in Iraq. I mean, in terms of the war on terror, I guess. Is it realistic to think that you can kill all the terrorists? If so, I mean, how do you plan on doing it? If you don't, then what is your plan? We start with, I guess.
Oh, great. I love this one. Yeah. Look, as I said before, every drone strike, every soldier we place on the ground, every bombing raid, every sanction creates new enemies. I mean, think about it. All you have to do to understand this, we have this perspective that we go in there with the best intentions. We're going to liberate. We are going to spread democracy. But what if another country came onto our soil with those same intentions? What would be our response? I can guarantee you that everyone in this room would then be an enemy of that country that viewed themselves as a liberator. So the entire point is that we need to find ways. We need to withdraw our troops from all overseas military operations. We need to return to what our servicemen and women enlisted for. They didn't swear to uphold democracy in other nations. They swore to defend and protect the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I would have to say that we are creating as many foreign enemies, and that our actions are also, our government's actions are also turning some of us into enemies of the government. We have to be very, very careful about how we proceed, because we are teetering on the edge of taking it one step too far. And if we take it that one step too far, it will be irrecoverable. So the libertarian position and President candidate Gary Johnson's position is that we need to withdraw our troops nationally and avoid foreign entanglements that can lead us to perpetual war.
This fairy tale notion of this kumbaya, we're all going to just get along, let's go shake hands, that died thousands of years ago. War is inevitable. War is part of who we are as a people. Why? Because there's always something on the other side that you want. And if you think that war is just going to stop because you decide to shake somebody's hand, you are living in a rabbit hole. War is part of life, just like peace is part of life. That is ridiculous.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead. It's quick. All right.
Let me answer your question first. No, I don't think we can kill all the terrorists. I believe the war on terrorists is going to go the way of the war on drugs. We're going to end up having more terrorists than we're having drugs. Period. Now, to go back a little bit and answer some things about some of the ways that we attack terrorists in other countries. Drone strikes were brought up a little bit ago by my Democratic friend down there. I would ask you, since you don't like drone strikes, ask President Obama to stop doing it, because he stepped up threefold since he got into office.
I don't remember saying we were against drone strikes. It was drone strikes that got Osama bin Laden.
However, I will also say this, that there are other things that we can do against terrorism besides waging war. We can try to make peace. I don't believe the war is inevitable. I don't think that it is a part of human nature, beyond. I do believe that there are some people that only understand violence, but that's not all people. And the first thing that we should do is try to come to terms with those that disagree with us. Now, if they are bent on our destruction, they attack American soil, then lo and behold, we might have to go different. That is inevitable, that we need to defend our nation. But besides that, there is no reason to shed innocent blood. I also believe that we probably should pull all of our troops from foreign soil. That's including Korea, that's including Germany, that's including Japan. Bring the troops back home, not just in Iraq and Afghanistan, not just in Libya, now that they've sent troops there. bring everyone back home, and let's take care of America first.
And let's have a tea party. Let's have crumpets and cupcakes. Let's
30
all
seconds
just
in.
get along. You know, that's the way the world works, right? Let's just all get along. Can we get into real life, gentlemen? In real life, you have enemies whether you make them or not. In real life, you have to stand your ground or someone will take your ground. It is that simple. But I am a realist, and I don't live in a world of make-believe.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Go ahead.
I think these two need to switch seats. Yeah, I just want to real quickly say, a lot of times people say there's no real choices. And the reason that people say there's no real choices between political parties is because so often the Republicans and Democrats are basically selling you the same concept. They're just putting different wrappers on it. And that's what we're seeing, where the Libertarian Party is really offering a solution to what most people believe. You know, just let's leave people alone. Let them be free. And that includes American citizens, people all around the world. So I think that's why we need a third voice in these type of debates.
Okay. Mr. Quentin.
One of the reasons why I would probably never get elected to public office is because I believe in the truth. And the truth of the matter is that in this country and in the rest of the world, people desire to be free. People desire to make their own decisions. And sometimes those decisions will not jive with what's in a certain nation's best interest. America has tried to allow people to be free. Take Egypt, for example. We pushed for democracy there, and we got an Islamic government who now doesn't like us that much. But that's what happens when there's freedom. And I think that if we change our tactics a little bit, maybe possibly we can bring troops home, save lives, and grow friends that might not necessarily be friends with us.
You know, I've got another registration change.
I haven't seen the Republican in this debate yet.
All right.
No, we see you in
Here's my next question here. I think you might like this, Libertarian. I'm going to let you answer first. The government seeks as a risk-sharing mechanism. Our tax dollars are pooled to protect individuals and communities against unforeseen catastrophes, be they medical, environment, or financial. Is this an appropriate function for government? By what principles should the appropriate breadth and subject area of this risk collectivization be defined? Are there specific areas where the government is providing too much insurance? Are there areas where it is not providing enough?
Great question. Absolutely great question. Well, I think one of the things that when we look to a politician, one of the things we want to do is look to the record. See, you know, what their accomplishments are and what their failures are. In this regard, we have got a great wealth of historical data on some of these safety net, you know, the socialization programs, the insurance programs that have been sold to us. They're all failing miserably. And let's point to healthcare, for example. Healthcare is an easy example. Let's think back to 1965. And I see the folks in this room. There's a handful of people that will remember 1965.
I can't.
Well, I'll explain it to you. 1965, we did not have any government involvement in the medical industry whatsoever. What did we have? We had the best medical system in the world. We were the envy of the world. You could go to a doctor, and the average person could afford to pay for it. You could get a major surgery without being bankrupted. The hospital would work with you. Maybe you had to go on a payment plan. And guess what? There were people that were too poor to even afford the most basic health care. You know what we had? We had Catholic Charities. We had Methodist Hospital. We had Mercy Hospital. Nobody was dying in the streets. Enter 1968. We start with Medicare. We get Medicaid. Now we're moving on to Obamacare, potentially Romneycare. What has happened is the cost of everything has skyrocketed. People will want to tell you it's a technology. They didn't have MRIs back then. But what they did have was the state-of-the-art equipment at the time. It's not the technology. It's government involvement. And we need to return to free market principles in all forms of these programs.
Okay. Great. You go. Wow.
I'm trying to calm down first. The problem with what you just said
We
is
don't
not
agree
1968, it's 1964, when the Civil Rights Act happened and you had to include women and minorities. That's when your problem changed. Because once you had to take in all the other people, you didn't have your little social, undiverse group that says, I can just walk into any hospital that I want to and get treatment. Because not everybody was allowing black people to walk into their hospital and get treatment.
Okay. Good.
Okay, I can't speak to what my Democratic friend said, but I will say this. I think that right now in America, there are too many social programs, and the government safety net isn't necessarily a safety net, it's a concrete floor. We are not a nation of cradle to grave, let me take care of you. We are a nation of let me roll the dice and see if I succeed. Let me try the best that I can, and if I succeed, great. If I fail, so be it. Right now, there is no risk to individuals. Right now, I have people in my family that would rather stay doing what they're doing, getting this check, that check, and this check from the state, from the federal government, from the local government in some cases, depending on the city that they live in, than go out and get a job simply because they make more money doing that. That is shameful. Every year, since I've been 22 years old, which has been a long time ago, believe it or not, I've written a check out to the IRS. And every year, since I was 22 years old, I've had a cousin to go out and buy a new television the exact same time I'm writing out my check to the IRS. And I go over to his house and I take his remote control every single year and I watch whatever I want to watch because I feel that's my television. Ask where the Republican was in this debate, it's right here.
All right. Okay. Yeah, rebuttal.
Yeah, I'd like a quick rebuttal to that. You know, I'm a big fan of the civil rights movement, and I'm a big fan of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I don't recall Dr. King ever going out there and fighting for entitlement programs.
Because you're not
Or
black.
people's movement?
Oh,
I am black. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna
He already said it.
No, he didn't finish what he was going to say. You know,
Yeah.
I recall him fighting for equality, for freedom.
And entitlements don't include that?
No, I don't think they do. I believe that
So
entitlement
blacks
is
were not
slavery.
entitled to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? That are the three entitlements in the United States of America.
What I'm
So
saying
blacks
is he
aren't
was
entitled
looking
to
for
it.
equality. What I'm saying is he was looking for equality and freedom.
And in
Equality
the
among all.
60s, you're going to tell me blacks had that equality and freedom?
What I'm saying to you is it's not the 1960s. It's
You
the
just
21st century.
you just said that we need to go back to the time
No,
when
that's not what
everybody
I
could
said.
just walk into them and have a kumbaya type of hospital.
Let me ask
In
you
the
this.
60s, black people couldn't just walk into the hospital.
Let me ask you this.
All right, I'm gonna go into your time too. Then. I'm gonna say his time too.
Yeah, all right.
So y'all go
Let me
first.
ask you this. In the 21st century, would any hospital reject anyone for any ethnic group or any orientation or any type of non-individual group identity?
And in its emergency room, probably not. But if you were to go in there and say
how's
you
your
needed
argument?
something other than an emergency, yes, they would reject you. If you did not have insurance, they will reject you.
Okay. Would a Mercy hospital in the 60s done the same thing?
They would reject you because of the color of your skin. Do you not think that in the South, why do you think
30
they had
seconds, 30
color
seconds.
only, whites only? If you went into some hospitals in the South, you were not going to get care, even though you're an American, because of the color of your skin.
So now that we've had almost 50 years of this, how has it helped? How has it helped black
We
people?
live in Tampa, Florida.
10 seconds.
Right across from where you are right now was a hospital called Clara White, just for black people. Why? Because in the city you live in, they didn't even let black people go to White
Did they treat them
Hospital.
for free?
All right. Let me stop.
Did they treat the poor for
All right,
free?
Let me stop it right now.
Defense rests.
Let Quentin. Quentin, go ahead. Go.
Okay. I'm not going to jump into that debate, but I will talk about this. I will talk about it. Since healthcare has come up in this. I will bring up what this new down the road to universal health care, Obamacare situation has caused us to do. It's caused us to not understand what affordable care is. Affordable care is not insurance. Affordable care is being able to go to a doctor and being afford to pay. Right now, in the United States, because the government sets the price for many healthcare procedures and requires that certain procedures are done, the price is abnormally high. Because doctors are afraid of being sued, they overcare for people. If we had less government regulation in the healthcare system, if the government got out of it, the federal government, you make the distinction, the federal government got out of it, guess what? We could have affordable care because a doctor that went to take care of lower income people could set up a clinic in a neighborhood and do that. A doctor that just wanted to do plastic surgery and drive a vet could do that too without suffering from a lawsuit or anything like that. Now, let me just say one thing before you jump out of your skin. I also believe that as far as entitlements go, there are no such thing as entitlements as far as the federal government is concerned. Now, if a state decided that it wanted to have universal health insurance, a state can do that. Why? Because the state has its own separate constitution, and states can do whatever they like. That's why Romney Care was such a great thing, because the state of Massachusetts decided it wanted to do that for its citizens. If the federal government lowered our taxes a little bit and stopped taking so much money out of the state coffers, guess what? Every state could have its own health care system for its own citizens.
Okay. If I give you significance, I want to give you two some extra time.
They thought, I would bet take extra time.
No, you go ahead.
Look,
I pretty much agree.
You get it. Quick, Tony.
what you just said is a crock. It is the free enterprise system why you have health care the way it is, because you have private insurance that can charge what they want to charge, and you have private hospitals that can charge what they want to charge, and you have money-hungry doctors that can charge what they want to charge. It's the free enterprise system in the United States of America that has raised the cost of Medicare or medical treatments in America. It is not the United States government.
Can I have 5 seconds? Can I have 5 seconds?
5 seconds.
Got a libertarian go next. Can I have 5 seconds?
Oh, yeah, I see.
Yeah, I just want 5 seconds.
Hold on. Can you go first?
I 5 seconds.
You want to go?
Really.
Go first.
I'm losing control here.
I know.
That is the most asinine thing I've ever heard.
Okay. All right. I'm good. Okay. All right. I have another question here. It's a long question. I think it's essentially this. We have such a large debt. I'm on the news. I hear 16 trillion right now. So what do we need to do to alleviate that right now? Let me start. Oh, you want to go first?
I can.
Okay, you go first. Go.
What can we do to eliminate the debt? One, let's balance the budget. Across the board, whether it be in defense, whether it be social programs, the National Park System, PBS, I don't care what it is. Every single department should have their budget cut until the budget is balanced. That's what should be done. Period. And then, after the budget is balanced, cut every single year from then on, cut the budget by 10%. Take that money and pay that money back. Step 2 of that process is to get rid of the Fed.
Oh. Okay. Wait a second. Hold on.
At this point, I need to see your
Yeah, I have to agree. Yeah, he is a Republican.
Yeah, absolutely. The most important thing that we can do right now is end the Federal Reserve System, end the concept of fiat currency, get rid of fractional reserve banking. If you guys aren't familiar with fractional reserve banking, basically that gives banks the authority to lend out 10 times of the money that they actually have in reserves. They're creating money out of thin air. Why do you think they're trying to, I remember in 2006, I knew we were going to have a collapse of the mortgage industry. You know how I knew this? I went through the drive-thru of my bank to make a deposit. In the drive-thru, the teller asked me, "Mr. Wiley, would you like a home equity line of credit for $40,000 today?" I said, "No, I'm not interested in that." They said, "It's real simple. I can pass the documents through the window." That's the thing. Once we realize that currency is debt, and the banks are actually wanting to print money and create loans until the system totally collapses, then we can, once we solve that problem, we can go back and we'll notice that most of the other problems that we face are not root causes, they're symptoms, that our currency system is the root cause. So really, I'm in full agreement, end the Fed, balance the budget, you do those two things, and you'll find the debt goes away very, very quickly.
Yes, I want to follow very quickly in the sense of like how quickly.
I imagine that we could probably do it all in 5 years.
I again find myself down the rabbit hole and never land. Because everything these two are saying is absolutely ridiculous. It's easy to hear all of this fizzle. Let me tell you the truth about the debt. How do we get our debt? Think about your house. In your house, you make a paycheck. You have bills. If for some reason that revenue that comes in gets cut, let's say you have 2 people working and 1 person ends up getting fired. Your revenue has been cut. If you don't do anything to bring that revenue back in, you're going to have to start using that credit card, aren't you? Or you're going to have to start touching something you're doing in your house. That is how the real world works. Not all this craziness that they're talking about. You live the federal government's debt every day. You want to know where your debt comes from? They want to tell you it comes from China. They want to tell you the 73% of the debt in the United States is from the citizens of the United States. You go out, you buy treasury bonds, you buy
Welfare check?
you buy bonds, you do savings, you do all of these things, and that money is used by the federal government, which is your money in savings, is used by the federal government. That is where 73% of your debt comes from. This question is about revenue versus spending. They are not telling you anything about how to get that revenue back in. You don't get revenue back in by cutting all of these products. You get revenue back in by getting the revenue from the people that's got the revenue. And that's stop all these tax breaks and take the money and put it back into the American economy.
Okay, rebuttal, okay.
I know what.
I'm gonna give you 2 minutes, okay? Rebuttal, 2 minutes. 2 minutes? Everybody 2 minutes.
I'm only going to need a portion of that, so you can have it now. You just said in your analogy that when one of the working people loses their job, you have to do something. And what did you say? You cut back.
No.
So how
That
are
is
you
not what they do. What they do is they go get credit cards.
Excuse me, this is my
Don't
time.
tell me what I said then.
Hang on a second. You told me what I said just a minute ago, and it wasn't accurate. I'm accurate this time. You just said that if one person loses your job, you have to cut some
I said
back
the
on
first thing you do is you go after credit cards. That's what I said.
Well, that's bad policy.
Isn't that not what you do?
No.
See, you're talking bad policy. I'm talking realistic. You're talking bad policy in your rabbit hole. I'm talking real world.
So what you're saying is we should base our federal government spending on the mistakes that the average person on the street makes?
No, we should base our federal government on revenue in versus spending out.
Okay, we have less revenue. What do we do now?
You cut taxes.
Do we call Citibank and get a decent?
All right, 1 minute left, 1 minute left.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get
Okay, hold on, you want to go?
This is kind of low.
Yeah, we're going to get to something we disagree on.
Okay.
My Democratic friend down there, in his bio, he said he went to the University of Florida. I don't think he took a macroeconomics class while he was there. Basically, the premise that you have about how the federal government gets its money is wrong. Where our debt comes from in your mind is wrong. You're correct, however, that saying that 73% of American debt is domestic. You know
So
where
the
that-
Federal Reserve doesn't get its money from that.
Tony,
Please
let
don't.
me finish.
No, actually it is not. Please don't interrupt me. Let me explain to you where it comes from.
Okay.
The federal government gets its money from the Federal Reserve.
Okay.
And we use that tax money.
I'm not
to
talking
pay-
about the
Please
dollar
don't-
bill. I'm talking about the revenue.
Please.
There's a
please.
difference.
There is. Please, let me explain to you where this comes from. Every time the budget goes out, the Federal Reserve gives the federal government its money. The money that we pay to the IRS and the Treasury goes directly to the Federal Reserve, not to the federal government. Now, every time the Fed gives our government money, guess what happens? They charge us interest on it, and that's where our debt comes from. Now, if you would like to change things, if you'd like to be responsible and get the budget balanced, sure, you can raise taxes. But eventually, the American people won't have any money left. Eventually, we're going to run out of rich people. Eventually, they're going to go after the middle class. And sooner or later, they're going to go after the poor. The only way to get back our country, the only way to
Well, I would
ensure
much
our-
rather go
Please,
individually
please,
because they're going after the
please,
middle class and the poor
please,
right now.
Please, 1 second.
Who's in the White House right now?
Please, please.
We need the money, so they're going after the, we have a Republican Congress.
1 second, we have a Republican House. 1 second. 1 second.
All right, few more seconds.
Thank you. Eventually, they're going to come after you and come after me. The only way that we can right this ship is by cutting our spending to the level of our current revenue, and then going after the source of the problem, which happens to be right now Denver.
Okay.
43% of our spending is on entitlements. Well, Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare. It is untouchable by law. You cannot touch entitlements.
That's not
53%.
true.
No.
All right.
Entitlements cannot be cut. You cannot.
Yes, you can.
You can.
All right. Let's go.
53% of our budget is the national
Do we need a
defense.
civics
All
lesson?
right. Hey, Tony. All right. All right, we're going to go to the next question.
We need to arrest Barack Obama.
All right. Next question. Every candidate talks about broadening the tax base and eliminating preferences in the tax code. One of the biggest preferences, the home mortgage interest deduction, distorts housing markets, unreasonably prefers owner-occupied housing over rental housing, and costs taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars in foregone revenue. In the interest of making the tax code fair and balancing the budget, would you support ending this wasteful tax expenditure? You want to go first?
No, I missed the question.
You want me to say it again? Anybody else?
I'll go first. I'm all for ending that if we get a flat tax.
That's it?
That's it.
You get,
I'm all for ending that if we get a flat tax.
you want to?
There you go.
Again, we're dealing with symptoms, folks.
Yeah.
The symptom is whether we should have a home mortgage deduction, whether we should give this corporation a loophole, whether we should have a deduction for child care, blah, 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 blah. These are symptoms of the problem. And part of that problem is actually the fact that we tax income at all. We should eliminate taxes on income. And if we have to have a tax in this country, it should be consumption-based. Don't tax the producers. Don't tax the people that are moving the economy forward, that are actually increasing our gross domestic product. Because when you get into that, and what happens is the Democrats and the Republicans will get into the areas where they're talking about a percentage here or a percentage here, or this break for this group, or this break for this group. Let me explain something to you. This is America. If we are going to have laws, they should be uniform across the board. They should apply to all people equally, without preference, without picking out a single group and penalizing them, without picking out a single group or a corporation or a industry and penalizing them or rewarding them. That's the root cause. And the only way to resolve that and get some of the lobbyists that are buying these favors out of Washington is to eliminate income taxes, abolish the IRS altogether, and get to a taxation system that is simple and makes sense.
Okay. Wow. There you go.
Don't tax the producers. Ain't that the same trickle down we've heard for the last 40 years? That's the exact same thing Ronald Reagan said and put us into recessions. That's the same thing George Bush the first said and we went through a recession. That's the same thing George Bush the second said and we went through 3 recessions, including the Great Recession. Trickle down economics does not work. Why? Because you don't get rich by spending. You get rich by saving. And if you give them money, they're going to keep their money. They're not going to give it back to you. Trickle-down economics does not work.
All right, anyone want to respond to that?
I'll try.
All right. I'm going to extend it to 2 minutes. Y'all talking over, I'm going to extend it to 2 minutes. So.
Okay. I don't think that the issue is trickle-down economics. I think the issue here is about tax deductions. If we're going to set America on the right path, one of the things we have to remember is there's going to be some pain. There's going to be some pain felt by individual people, normal Americans like you. If I had to give up my housing tax deduction, that check that I write out every year, Jesus H. Christ, it would be fun. However, if it happens that we can move to a flat tax or a consumption tax and we can get rid of the IRS, I'm all for it. I'll go through that. Now, I don't know how trickle-down economics got into play here, but I will say this. If you had taken an economics class at all in all of your schooling, you would know that there is something called the law of diminishing returns. And there's only so much you can tax an individual or a company or anything before you start taking in less money. The more you increase the tax rate, the less money you receive after a certain point. So, I don't know where my Democratic friend is coming from, but I do know this, that if we really want to change this country, we're going to have to do something drastically different than we have done.
This is another area where Republicans and Democrats are both nibbling at the edges. Let me give you the cold, hard truth.
Oh,
We
finally.
are on a path to economic collapse. It's going to happen, folks, unless we do some very, very radical things. And when you've got Republicans talking about, let's cut taxes a little bit here, and you've got Democrats talking about let's raise taxes for the rich but cut them a little bit here, that's not going to solve the problem. You've got Democrats and Republicans are rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Unless we get the root cause of the problem, which is the currency problem, unless we get our currency problem under control. Put it to you this way. In 1913, the same year that the Federal Reserve was created, a Model T, tricked out Model T, cost $700. Okay? Let's take it to today, 2013, 100 years later, 2013, loaded Lincoln costs, say, $45,000. Okay? That's a huge difference. $700 here, $45,000 here. But you know what? If you price those two vehicles in gold, the value of the gold, it is exactly the same. We are inflating our own currency out of existence. And let me tell you, folks, one day you could very well wake up and bread is $25 a loaf. When that happens, your 10% tax cut or your 10% tax increase is not going to matter a damn.
First and foremost, in 1913, $700 was a lot of money.
That's what I just said.
No. What you said in 1913, that car and this car at $40,000 is two different prices. In 1913, $700 was a lot of money.
I made the point that the only thing that's changed is the
back to my friend that is the Republican. It is easy to write up your mathematical formulas, but the one thing that you're not including is the human element. You can go and write all your math and your economics and all you want, but when you give that money back to that rich man and that rich man tells you to kiss his ass, then you can't write that in your formula.
We better stop confusing the issue with actual math here.
Yeah, because you guys are going on this fairy tale that you wrote down on a piece of paper, but you are not including the human element into that. You are not implementing the fact that you can't tell what that human's going to do once you give him that money. You just assume he's going to take it and spend it, and it's going to trickle back down to you. But if he takes it and invests it, then all the people on the bottom are suffering.
Well, do you have any civil rights issue questions so we can agree?
All right. I'll go to the next question. All right. Civil rights issue. How do you explain, I'm going to start with you. How do you explain the disparity in incarceration rates for nonviolent drug offenses between minorities and Caucasians? Is it a matter? Hold on. Let me finish this. Sorry. Is it a matter of police misconduct? A symptom of more widespread inequality? Or are there minorities inherently more likely to commit felony drug offenses than other races? Okay. On a related point, we get to a related point. The U.S. has 5% of the world's population and 25% of its prisoners. Are American citizens more likely than other populations to commit crime? If not, how do you explain it?
I explain it because we have too many laws. We need to end the war on drugs right now. It's a complete and utter failure.
And
And all it
nobody's
does.
that in the debate.
Exactly.
I want to know if
That's why you need to call them up and tell them you need a libertarian.
Exactly.
The drug war is a complete failure, and all it does is put young people in prison for nothing, nonviolent offenses. It clogs our prisons. It destroys families and lives.
And violent offenders have less sentences than drug offenders.
Exactly. We need to
Ridiculous. It can
legalize.
offend your child and have less sentence than a drug offender.
Good point. See,
How much
these
your
guys
kid is better than Donald Trump.
my argument point. But the point is we need to end the war on drugs. And part of that question was also interesting. Whether it was the disparity between blacks and whites in prison as a percentage of our incarceration. Yeah, I do believe that there is profiling all the time. I think it happens. The way that you put a stop to it is you take away that power by ending the drug war and restoring our constitutional rights. To do that, one of the things you can do is elect people who believe in civil liberties. And if you're not sure who believes in civil liberties of your potential candidates, just hit the libertarian. You're pretty much guaranteed they believe in civil liberties. But once we take away the ability of law enforcement to pull somebody over randomly, I'm just checking to see if you've got any drugs. Well, guess what? Yeah, so what? There's a joint in the ashtray. What are you going to do about it? It's legal. It ends that problem right there. All right, so yeah, end the war on drugs, and I think you'll see a lot more equality in law enforcement.
Okay. Hold on. You want to go last?
I think one of the biggest reasons why we have such a sway in our prison system is because of our free enterprise system that wants to privatize prisons. When you privatize a prison, it's automatic that you got to keep that prison filled to make money. So you pay the lawmakers to make laws to go and get people put in those prisons. It's a residual effect. For example, Florida just passed a law that says If you have your pants hanging down, you can get a ticket. If you get it 3 times, you can go to jail for just having your pants hanging down. Why? Because we have taken misdemeanors, we have made them felonies, and we have taken third-degree misdemeanors and made them first-degree misdemeanors because we have a prison system, especially in this state, where they need more people in those prisons. And who do you go after? You go after the poor, you go after the unable to represent themselves. Why? Because when you charge them, they can't afford a lawyer. When you put them in jail, they can't afford a bond. And then, in the state of Florida right now, they actually are in private jails, they're making the prisoners pay per day to be there. Pay per day to be there. You go to jail, and then you have to pay to be in jail. It is a residual effect that starts with this idea of greed and wanting money, and you will pay your politicians to make your money.
I actually halfway agree with both of you. Almost. I don't think we should just make all narcotics legal. However, I do think the laws need to be changed a little bit. And I actually partly agree with my Democratic friend on the half point that he made sense on. Right now, the American justice system is extremely unfair. And it's not unfair based upon race. It's unfair based upon the ability to pay. If there's anything wrong with the American justice system, it's the fact that I can go out and murder 25 people, or my wife who's dating a waiter, and hire a group of good attorneys and I can get off. Or I could be a drug kingpin and I can hire a great attorney and only see the inside of the jail or maybe. Our system right now, our legal system is paid to play. And that is completely wrong. If we're going to do anything, I think we should get rid of that inequality in our American justice system. I think we do need to change the laws to some degree, but I also think we should make it fair and equitable on both sides. If we're going to fund on a local level, if we're going to give the prosecutor's office $2 million to do business for the year, we should also give the same amount of money and the same resources to the public. We should make it completely fair to do that. And in some counties and jurisdictions, the public defender's office is under the prosecutor's office to report to the prosecutor. No one can win that. So why is there a discrepancy in this country? Yes, it was because of racism at one time. And yes, it is because of unfair laws now. And yes, it is definitely because there is economic inequality in this country and the justice system plays.
Okay. All right. We're to my next question. One, civil rights. Okay, good. I'm coming up with this question now. Now, there was a situation, the Supreme Court is making a ruling on this case from the University of Texas about affirmative action. I think this white student, white applicant, felt that she had better grades than a black applicant who was allowed to go in there. So basically, I guess my question is, what do you think of affirmative action? Should it be allowed? If not, and if you do think it should be allowed, why? Do you want to go first?
I do. I really want to go first.
I already feel like I do what you said. You already know that.
I went to a historically black college in Mississippi. That's where I graduated from, and I studied economics. I was sitting in an affirmative action forum. Here I am, a junior in college. I've been told by this school, Toulouse College, which was built on a plantation that Harriet Tubman escaped from, full of history, that because I have a two-year education, I can do anything in the world. And I have been paying $22,000 a year for them to tell me. And in front of me was a sitting United States Congressman, Congressman Benny Thompson, 2 lawyers and a Mississippi Supreme Court justice, all African Americans, telling me that once I graduate, I can do nothing without affirmative action. I got this look on my face apparently, and my friends told me, please, Clinton, shut up, sit down. I stood up and I asked the question, if all that's true, why am I paying you $22,000 a year to tell me that I can do anything with this education because I am who I am and I am a Tougaloo man? Why is that? And I was told something that I'll never forget. They said, if you see a few more sunrises, you'll grow to understand.
Yes, you will.
Well, that was 20 years ago. I'm a lot older than I was. And apparently, I've seen a few more sunrises, and I've made my way in the world without affirmative action. Now, equality is something that the civil rights movement was all about. That is what Dr. King fought for. And equality is a double-edged sword. It allows you to come in and have the even footing to succeed, but it also allows you to fail. And we cannot legislate an individual's personal beliefs. We can ensure that the laws of the land do not stop people from getting certain things, but I guarantee you, the day we start allowing people and doing set-asides for individuals, it's going to come back to bite us in the butt. Because that's not equality. That actually is reverse racism.
Okay. All right, I'll let you go first, and I'll let you go last, because I can already see the steam coming out of you. Yeah, come in.
All right. Well, all I know is, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm not black.
I already know this.
But all I know is if I was, I would be offended as hell by affirmative action. You mean to tell me that you're coming out and telling me that I can't do it, like you point out, that I can't do it on my own without help from the government? I can't do it without getting a 10-yard head start in the race? Folks, I'm sorry, that would piss me off.
10-yard head.
Oh, let him finish. Let him finish. Let him finish. Write your notes. Write your notes. Hey, Tony, let him finish. Just write your notes. Just put it down.
What we need to strive for, is exactly what we should have had when the Constitution was written. It's a tragedy of our history that it wasn't set up that way originally. All men, and by men, I'm gender non-specific, all people are created equal. That's what we need to strive for. And
How
that's
many women are created equal? My ass.
Tony. Let him finish. Please, let him finish.
I think that we've gotten close. Are there pockets? Yeah, sure. There's still pockets of racism in this country. There may always be. And you know what? The groups affected may change over time. But the point, and I don't have a personal perspective on that. I really can't speak to that. But I can tell you is what we should strive for is true equality. And that's not giving any group any penalties, and that's not giving any group any special favors. Let's make it a level playing field for everybody, and then we all succeed or fail on our own merits.
Let's make it a level playing field. Give me back my 200 years.
You're talking
You have been about me for 200 years. And then all of a sudden you want to let me out of the gate, and because I'm on the same field as you, I'm equal? You give me those 200 years, and then we're equal.
You got any more to say?
I'm 42, man. I can't give it to him.
I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about this country.
They're dead.
Affirmative action is about this country. It ain't about you.
So it's reparations. Payback is what you're talking about.
We deserve, we built this country.
I got you.
We built this country. Black people built this country.
We all built this country.
Slaves built
All of
this
us.
country.
Hey. You
About
got
the
to continue?
Americans.
They got put on PlayStation.
Hey. You want to continue?
Yes, I want to continue. It's this simple. If you get on a track and you're running a mile race, and white people have already ran 3 laps, and then you let the black people out and say you're on the same plateau, you're not. Because by the time you get around that curve, they've already won. Don't tell me affirmative action ain't needed. Tell them to hold up until we're all on that 3rd lap, and then you can all go. We ain't all on the 3rd lap yet.
Okay, we got 15. Hold on. Hold on. Let her rebuttal, it's 15 minutes left.
Okay, let me
Anybody
try
want-
to hear from the mediator, okay? Let's just try to go on another direction, okay? Because
Well,
there is a lot of-
they get the rebut here, they get the rebut.
Yeah, that's
So-
another debate right
All right.
there.
No, they get the rebut to this topic here, so I'm gonna let you go first, Luke. All right?
Wow.
I don't care. I know how I feel.
The American Constitution was flawed when it began. It is flawed today. It is not the end-all, be-all. It is not the Ten Commandments. It was not written by God. It was written by man. That being said, one of the things that we need to remember about our Constitution is that it guarantees the equality of opportunity and not the equality of outcome. You asked back for 200 years. I would love to get that 40 acres and a mule. I would love to have that 40 acres in the middle of Manhattan. I would love that. But the likelihood of that occurring is very small. That being said, what we can do today is begin guaranteeing individuals, whether they be black, white, Mexican, Asian, whatever, as long as they're American, guaranteeing them opportunity to succeed in this country and to fail in this country on their own merit. There should be no law that stops an individual from trying to do what they want to do and pursuing happiness. If that law occurs, the government should step in. Outside of that, no.
Okay.
And just real quickly, I'd like to say, I'd like to give a little of my ethnic angle on this from my own perspective. I'm of Scottish descent. I'm one of those folks from the Highland clans. Back about 300 years ago, the English took my family's ancestral land and slaughtered my people. But you know what? To expect today the English government to cut me a check for that? Really? You know, really? Do I need help from the English government to succeed on my own?
Do you live
Hold on,
in
Tony, let him finish. Please, let him finish.
So that's the point. Look, every group throughout history has faced tragedy. The goal of us as a species, as a people, not as a race, as a people, as a species, should be to overcome that and learn from the mistakes of history so that we don't repeat them. But when we go looking for vengeance, then it becomes a totally different thing. We can't go that route. We have to move towards the future. And I think we're getting close if we just stop talking about it. Let's stop talking about it. You know, seriously.
Wow. Out of sight, out of mind.
You were so focused on what happened 200 years ago that you're making excuses and you're getting angry today over what happened 200 years ago.
30 seconds, give me 30 seconds.
Now,
Hold on.
I'm going to tell you what happens today.
Hold on.
We ain't going to talk about 200 years. We're going to talk about today. Me and you work side by side on an assembly line. We work 40 hours a week. We both get paid the same thing, right? The difference is you go home to your farm that your granddaddy gave you, and I go home to an apartment because I can't own land until the last 60 years. That is the difference. I just want to tell you, you no, that's inside. Let me finish. You let me finish. Now, you go home and you own your 40 acres and your house. I go home to my apartment because my granddaddy, let me finish. My granddaddy could not pass down land to me because my granddaddy didn't own land. So what happens? I get in a financial crunch. I got to go to the government. You get to a financial crunch. You can sell your granddaddy's land. That's the difference.
Okay,
You can't leave your land for my granddaddy.
Okay, all right. Y'all got to follow. We got to go. Okay. All right. Okay, now, I'm going to change the subject. All right.
Good idea.
Yeah, you wanted some rights. All right. One of the biggest issues in the Latino community is immigration. What would you do to stop illegal immigrants, and what would you do?
Regarding the presidential debate, because I heard you guys' podcast, I've heard a lot of reviews about it, and being an Ohioan, and my governor was there, it was here, I thought maybe I should share a little bit about that. I wasn't at the debate, but I felt like my top three were people who I think did the best were Kasich, Christie, and Rubio.
Really?
I know you guys probably,
I agree with you.
know,
I agree with you with
disagree.
I agree with you with Kasich. I think on a level of serious politics, he probably did the best. On the level of what will appeal to Republicans, he did not win that one. And that's why I think he's sort of being ignored somewhat. Rubio did all right. I could see Rubio being in a top three. That's for sure. Christie, though, honestly, I think Christie, without a doubt, him and Jeb Bush, to me, it's a toss-up between who did the worst. Jeb Bush just got steamrolled, didn't make himself visible at all. That's how he lost to me. He could not speak well. He could not put forth his message well. He was just horrible in that aspect. Mm-hmm. But Christie was loud and made himself seen and viewed and heard, and he got owned by Rand Paul. After that, I honestly said to myself, I said on the show when we were doing the live stream, Chris Christie could walk off the stage right now and say, I'm bowing out because he is done. Rand Paul dug Chris Christie's grave right there.
Well, see, that's where I disagree, though, because when he had that exchange with Paul, right, the one where Paul said, I remember the hug you gave to President Obama. I saw that as a cheap shot. Look, that was a point of disaster, and that shows unity in the time of
to the
disaster.
Republican
and Paul
Party,
just throws that in there as a cheap shot.
I understand how you're coming. I understand how you're looking at this from.
Sure.
But if you are a Republican voting in the Republican primary and you look at all 17 candidates and you're picturing them in your head when you're pulling the lever, what's the first picture of Chris Christie that'll pop up in your head when you're going into that booth? You're going to see him hugging President Obama. And you will not vote for. He's the only one. He's the only one who's ever hugged President Obama. He's done.
That's true.
He's done. They already don't like him because he's a loudmouth Northerner, and that does not repeal to many swaths of the Republican base. So he's already got that working against him. And then any of those people who don't mind him being that, picture Obama hugging Christie, and that's it. They're out. People in New Jersey don't even like Chris Christie. He's got nobody. I can't picture one group of, like, Huckabee says some horrible things, but I know the people who vote for Huckabee. I know the people who are going to go in there voting for Kasich. I know the people who are going to go in there and vote for Trump. And that's a large array of people too. I can't imagine one sliver of people who are going to go in there and vote for Christie. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I know I've been talking over you. Go ahead.
No, you're good. All right, so I completely understand every single thing you said, and I completely co-sign with every point you just put up. However, what I thought that Christie handled well was after Paul really just threw out that cheap shot, and Paul wasn't having that good of a... Well, he did look childish and overtly aggressive and pugnacious the whole night, and then Christie said, I don't remember that hug, but I do remember the hug that I gave to the millions of families whose family members were victims in the 9/11, and how he talked about how he was, appointed attorney or what prosecutor, whatever he was, September 10th, and he just brought that in there, and he really gave a much more rational and composed and heartfelt response to Paul's aggressive and really unwarranted accusation. And not only that, but going back to also Jeb Bush, like you said. Look, I completely. In fact, someone on MSNBC said after the debate that Bush looked like oatmeal getting colder, and I completely agree with that. The thing is, I felt like Bush might have played it well, because what if he went in there? Okay, let's flip it around. What if he went in there really confident, really sure? Doesn't that sort of give off the impression of, I guess my brother's been president, my dad's been president, Like he shows that much confidence, and he seems like one of those establishment snobs that can just come in and be out of public office for so many years, but just come back in and say, I'm running for president, and have everyone backing him. Obviously, look, he went, yes. Look, you didn't look competent there in the slightest means. But I felt that it's better that he comes in there and goes on the complete end, being really confident.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you go because we're running out of time. But I agree with you most about what you said about Jeb Bush. He was not. He looked like he's never been on camera before. He looked like he was horrible at speaking to people. He looked like he was shell shocked. He had no idea how to handle it. But I'm gonna let you go and just say a quick thing about Christie. I think you're underestimating how sick the American people at large are of the whole leaning on the 9/11 thing. This isn't 10 years ago. This isn't 5 years ago. This isn't even maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. People are, and a large group of people on both sides of the aisle are getting really sick and tired of the whole, 9/11 as the excuse to say, you can't hit me there. It's really turned a lot of people off. And Rand Paul made a face. Michael pointed it out when we were watching that debate. When Christie dropped the 9/11 families, Rand Paul pursed his lips like, are you serious? And I think a large portion of people watching that had that same reaction when Chris Christie leaned on the whole, can't hit me there, 9/11. It's just become a response to try to absolve yourself from any sort of criticism or critique or attack. And I think a lot of people are sick of it because he's using 9/11. He's not actually, he's outright using this tragedy, this event, this terrorist attack for political gain. And it's quite honestly disgusting. And I think the American public are sick of that.